YouTube, what's going on? Alright, so I'm going to do a little first impressions, sort of a unboxing, which I've already unboxed it, but this is the brand new, just released Sage 1 from Spyderco, Taichung, Taiwan, in Maxamet blade steel. So the Sage 1 is part of a series that Spyderco did to celebrate different knife makers and locking mechanisms that have been created over the years in the knife industry. So the very first one in the series was this one, the Sage 1 with Michael Walker's liner lock mechanism, which is essentially a stainless steel liner that stainless steel liners that help hold the knife and everything together, but the liner also acts as the lock bar to keep the blade open and locked in place where it can't close without you releasing the locking mechanism. And essentially all it is they cut out a little slot, a little spot in the liner itself on one side and bend it over a certain amount, and then when the knife is in the closed position, they insert a detent ball, which is either a steel ball or sometimes a ceramic ball, into the liner itself that sticks out of the liner a little bit and holds the liner away from the blade so they're not rubbing together. So when it's in the closed position like it is right here, that liner will fall into a hole that's milled into the blade itself, and it keeps the knife locked into the closed position, which is not actually locked. You don't want to lock it in place where it can't come out without disengaging something. You just want to keep it from falling out during just general movements or when it's in your pocket, but you want to be able to easily open the blade up when necessary. So that's what the detent ball does. And then once you open it up, that cutout that we talked about allows this section of the liner to spring over into a spot cut out on the tang of the blade that sort of wedges itself into that spot. You see how the tang of the blade's cut at an angle to accept this lock bar, and it allows it to go over so far, but not to go all the way over to where it's touching the other scale. So yeah, that's what creates the lockup, and it's super solid. There's no blade play in any direction, and then you just push it back over. You got a really good, generous cutout here for access to the lock bar that allows you to close it, and yeah, it works extremely well. So the Sage 1 is the first one in the series, and they went Sage 1 all the way to Sage 5. And I've got a feeling with this new model that they might be doing a run of Maxamet through the entire series. That's the only guess that I can come up with, because this knife is discontinued. They do not make the Sage 1 anymore. So when they announced that they were doing the Sage 1 in Maxamet, that was my first thought was, why are they doing the Sage 1? It's discontinued. And then I thought, well, maybe they're going to make them all again and do them in Maxamet. That seems to be a great choice to me for Maxamet to go in a Sage, considering Maxamet is so hard and can be easy to damage in terms of chipping the blade or snapping the blade, depending on how much force you smack it up against something with, or if you put too much tension and bend it too far one way or the other, it could break, because it's I don't know how hard this blade is, but I know my old Mannix that I just sold, I had it tested and it was 70 HRC, 70 Rockwell, which is extremely hard. So yeah, it's easy to damage it. So it makes sense to put it on a lightweight folder like the Sage series, just for general light duty EDC carry. So I feel like it's a perfect set or series to do it with, and the Sage series is so popular that I guess they figured that was a good bet, that they could reintroduce the entire Sage series, and maybe they won't do it, but even if they did, I think it's a good choice. I feel like they could do all of them again with Maxamet, and they would all sell out, I would imagine, pretty easily. So that's a way that Spyderco goes about making new models, and creating more revenue for themselves and putting more options out there in the community. But it allows them to create something fresh and new and build hype around, where they don't necessarily have to do any real work, because they're not having to design a new knife or create new tooling to make a new knife. They just go back to their old files. And most of these modern companies use CNC type machines to make most of this stuff, so they just pull up their old programs, to make the scales, to make the liners, to do all this stuff that they already have in place, and just change the materials around a little bit. So pretty cool. Honestly, I like it. I wasn't that excited about it when it came out, but it popped up on Spyderco's website. And, I'm part of the OpFocus program, so I get a discount if I order directly from Spyderco. And I hadn't gotten a new knife in a while, so I decided to pick it up. And I'm really glad that I did, because I'm really impressed with the quality of this knife. The fit and finish is really excellent. So let me break it down for you guys. Just everything we got going on here. So this is about a 7, I think it's a 7 1/4 inch knife. Don't kill me in the comments that I didn't look up the specs or anything. I just want this to be kind of a 10-minute video. So 7 1/4 inches, I think, is what this is. It's the same length as a Para 3, but a little bit different style blade, more of a leaf shaped blade, where the Para 3 is more of a clip point style blade. But the ergonomics between the Sage and the Para 3 are very, very similar. They're almost identical. Not exactly, but very, very close. So you've got this leaf-shaped blade, and one thing that's really great about the Sage series, and this might just be unique because they're made in Taiwan, and they kind of make their higher-end models in Taiwan. But one thing that's always drawn me to the Sage series is the geometry of the blades. They normally grind these blades really a good bit thinner behind the edge, and the Sage, compared to the Para 3, the blade stock on the Sage is, I want to say it's 110 thousandths. It's either 110 or 115 or 118, somewhere around in there. So it's a good bit thinner blade stock than the Para 3, and they also come in pretty thin behind the edge. I don't know how thin this one is. It feels thin to me by touch, but I can't say exactly what it is. But I do know from my experience with the Sage 5 that I used to own, it was 13 thousandths behind the edge. When I got it new with the factory edge, it was 13 thousandths. Now, I don't know if this one is quite that thin. I don't think it is. And given the fact that Maxamet is so hard to grind, it wouldn't surprise me if it wasn't that thin behind the edge, but it does feel thinner than most knives. And a lot of times you can tell by the width of the bevels. So if we look at, I know that this one is anywhere from about 19 to 27 thousandths behind the edge right there at the tip. So if we compare the width of these bevels, it's a good bit thinner than the Manix, if we're just going off of that. A lot of times that can be misleading as well, though. It depends on what the angle of the edge is, but generally Spyderco's are roughly 17 degrees per side, 20 degrees per side, somewhere around in there, and they're all roughly around that angle, and pretty consistent. So I have a feeling that this is somewhere around between 15 and 20 thousandths behind the edge, which is good. It's not 10 thousandths, 13 thousandths like I hoped it would be. It might be that thin, but I don't think it is. So anyways, let's move past that. Really good geometry anyway, and pretty thin blade stock, and just beautifully executed. So that satin finish always draws me in for Spyderco's. That big wide blade with the gorgeous satin finish grind lines, it always draws me in. And then if you look really closely at this edge, at the factory bevel, look at the plunge grind. It's sharpened all the way to the plunge grind, or very, very close to it. And I absolutely love that fact because it makes it so much easier. If I decide to keep this knife and use it, it's going to be so much easier to grind or sharpen by hand for me. So I can definitely appreciate that fact. And another unique thing that they did with this is look at the Spyderco hole. You see that? It's chamfered around the hole, and not just deburred, it's actually got a chamfer to it. So after they put the hole in there, before they ground the bevels on this, they took a chamfering tool and cut a chamfer around the edge of the hole, and then they ground the flat ground on it. So I thought that was pretty interesting, along with the geometry and the satin finish. So the ergonomics on these, like I said, are fantastic. You've got some jimping up top, which it's a lot cleaner done than the Golden Colorado jimping, and it's not as defined. So it works really well, but it's not like uncomfortably sharp. Now let me show you the difference and why I kind of like this better. I like there to be a little grip, but I don't like it to be overly aggressive. If you look at the Mannix, if I could get it to focus, you can see that the Mannix jimping is really kind of aggressive and unrefined. It's hard to tell in this video, but it's just a lot more crudely done than the way that they do it in Taiwan. So I can definitely appreciate that fact. And then just the overall quality of this knife is just very high, and it's very nice. It's very well done. The lockup is solid. It sounds really well done when it locks up. It's just the sound of a liner lock locking up is a really confidence inspiring sound, and the feel of the lockup is extremely solid. The cutout in the lock bar, like I said, is really generous and well done. It makes it super easy to access that liner lock and close the knife. I love the minimal construction fact of this, the fact that it just has 3 body screws and that they're all the same size. I can definitely appreciate the Grey G10 is the standard with the Maxamet models, so I don't know why. I guess it kind of matched the stonewash finish of the USA made models, but with this, I would have thought that they would have went with something different. I don't know why they didn't. But either way, I like it. There's nothing wrong with it. It kind of reminds me of the Sage 2, is the way it looks. And I'm really hoping that they go ahead and make a Sage 2 in Maxamet. I'll definitely be picking that up if they do. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Got the wire pocket clip, the open back construction with the nice, well done standoffs there. Relieved liners to reduce the weight, and the liners are done really well. They look kind of polished around the edges and on the inside, and you know, if you look at the little details on the top of the spine, how this is polished right here, the jimping looks really good up there and down here, and the bottom part of that is polished as well. It's just a really well executed knife. Everything about it, every detail has been thought about. The attention to detail is fantastic. The quality of everything is fantastic. The edge bevel is perfectly consistent from side to side. The satin finish on the grind looks perfect. The only thing that I can find on this so far that is even moderately not well done is, if you look at the Sages, they do the satin finish this way on the primary bevel, and then they do another satin finish this way for this flat spot on the blades. If you look at it on here, it looks kind of, I don't know if it's oxidation already or it just isn't that well done. I don't know. I'm going to try to clean it off, but it looks kind of like milky or cloudy. It's kind of weird looking. So that's the only thing about this that I've found I've been like, oh, that doesn't look that great. But everything else about it is flawless. The lockup, the way that they sharpened the knife is perfect. The chamfer on the hole is something unique and different, And I know it'll make a lot of people happy because some people complain about the sharpness of their hole in Taiwan. Not a big deal to me, but I know it bothers some people. The smoothness of the knife, the detent is adequate. It doesn't feel super strong when you close it, like, you know, but it'll smooth up over time and snap that blade in there a little bit better. But what it is it's solid. The blade's not coming out, and it seems to be dialed in perfectly. And I'll let you see. I'm just gonna put the most minimal pressure to get the blade out, and we'll see what happens. Perfect. You can't do any better than that. You don't want it super strong where it's hard to get the blade out, but you don't want it to fail when you use the minimal amount of pressure. So as far as I'm concerned, the detent is dialed in perfectly, and everything about this knife is almost flawless. Besides that cloudy look on the top of the blade there, um, it's beautifully well done, and I'm kind of excited about it. More excited about it than I thought I was going to be. I thought I was going to get it, look at it, be like, oh yeah, that's nice, and probably sell it. But at this point, I'm considering keeping it and putting it into my rotation and really giving it a try to see if I want to keep it as an EDC. So we'll see. But anyways, guys, that's a little longer than I thought or hoped. But I hope you enjoyed and found it useful, and we'll see you guys next time.